Thank you. Well, I probably will sound like your grandfather instead of someone who is so famous. I think one of the things which isn't happening now is communication between people in age vertical direction. We have fantastic communication between each other, and I see when my wife and I go into schools, we see the young ladies are thumb typing even while I thought we were talking to them. But the communication between people with some experience and ones who are getting ready to have experience, there's some richness in that. And I hope that I can share with you some ideas that you'll find interesting to think about. Let's see, we need the pictures to be up, if you please, and not a picture of me. So anyway, I would like to, let's see, I don't know if I have the power to do this. Okay, here we go. So in thinking about what is the right way of talking about this, Lindy and I come to the feeling that the issue is we really need to learn how to learn, because things are changing fast. And for sure, what we know now, what we've learned, in my racket, which kind of integrated circuit is a good amplifier for some job, that is over and done with. In 2 weeks, there's a new one on the company's web, and you need to keep up. And so that's just one thing. So the problem is more general. We need to learn how to learn. If I have the slide back, then I will show I wanted to just note that some of the topics that I thought would be interesting for us to talk about. One of them is I have a connection to Honeywell, which goes into a Costco store, and I was thrilled to walk in there and find that I could get a radio that could talk to my company, the National Bureau of Standards, or NIST it's called now, and that shows this way to get the real time at home. I've had some contact with the Honeywell previous initiative. Linda and I went to Chongqing, and now we have the chance to be in Mexicali to join with you. Thank you all for getting up early to come here. I hope in the end you'll think it was worth it. So different universities have different characteristics. This is the neighboring town for us, Fort Collins. And if you can read it, it says if you buy anything in this store, it's actually a gun store, you get a Nobel Prize as part of it. So that's way easier than the way I did it, I'll tell you. So today's topics I think are maybe worth noting that in when I started out, something that was going to be important is going to be an individual task, and it's going to take a long time. And things like elegance and correctness were absolutely critical. Work is done mostly by an individual, and if you pick a wrong subject, then you're sort of in a dead end, and that isn't going to be so exciting. If you pick something which for me just came at the same time as I was ready to start, the same year, that's the laser. That's a good story, and so we pursue that. And so then you're all set up at 25 years or something, maybe 15 years as a manager or something like that. And the reward system for that is, in science, is not basically money. That's what the guys in Wall Street want. But it's such a small thing. Okay, you need some money. But the main thing is you need something that's really fun. I mean, why should I go to work today? If I get more money, okay, big deal. If I could figure out something, that's really valuable. So now you're coming into this time of transition between university and the outside world. And my perspective of that is that the rules are different now. That the good results, they depend on being the first rather than necessarily the very best. Real progress depends on what your knowledge is, and knowledge outside your field is important. That if you know just a whisper of something, if you know something that exists, that's really valuable. So please, when you use Google to search and narrow down on what you want to learn about, please spend 10 minutes or something each day searching what somebody else thinks is valuable. So you can look, I don't care what you look on, the American Physical Society has breaking news about what's happening in physics. In your subject, there may be some equivalent society thing. The BBC has some news about what's happening across the world. That's also valuable. You could find out that Chinese people are buying all the neodymium ore that they could buy. So I knew about that like 6 months before it was a crisis for the Toyota company. So it's quite interesting. So these properties of insight and creativity, that's how it's going to happen. And if it's going to be fun for you, it ought to be in a field that you're good at and that you really like. And I'm not the original thinker on this topic. There's a nice book by Ken Robinson. He calls it The Elements. And he's discussing how is it that you really get into your power band and make stuff happen. Well, how did we get here? So we started, I'm a little surprised at this feeding. So we started with one cell, and less than a year later, we have 10 to the 11th neurons. They're present but not connected. And then after our birth, we experience some years, maybe 20, and we come to the place that, well, just to say it in a direct way, we feel like we know absolutely everything. And if you ask us how did we get that way, well, we have straight lines, and they connect us strictly with experience and how it rose, and we make a picture. And at that level, then we have a bit of a personality developed. But in fact, what I can point out is that the real fact is that it's not all that well connected. And as you will know, when you're 25 or 30, your opinions when you were 20 are not as sophisticated. At least I hope so. And so this jungle of wires is more what I think the mapping was. But nevertheless, eventually, and especially in university time, one begins to get things sorted out, and there's a little bit of directivity to it. And you begin to have an appearance to yourself and to your dreams about, okay, this is sort of what I'm doing. Now, if you go to age 25, then some maturing has happened. And so this is like end of graduate school or something, if that's the highway you go, or the end of your first work. You have some things that are now tied up and connected much better than they were before. And what it leads to is sort of an appearance for you, an understanding this is your image of yourself and other people's image as well. And so then this is what we're going to do. We're figured out what we know. We need to figure out what we're good at. And then we need to pursue this dream. That's my base advice. Now, there's a whole world to explore. And so perhaps there's some boundary conditions that we need to take into account. You can't always just do exactly what you like, because I would have been a professional piano player instead of a scientist. But when I went to the school, then this girl, Carol Rosenberger, was absolutely better than I was, even though I thought I could play pretty well. So you need a realistic picture of what your capabilities are. And so in this evolution, one of the news that I have for you is that some work is going to be needed. And one way to emphasize that for my graduate students, Lindy found this poster someplace. You can see this on the bottom. We didn't feel it was appropriate to put it right up at the eye level for the students. That's a little too intimidating. But anyway, suggesting that it would be good to show up on Saturday and possibly even on Sunday. But in exchange for that, we had picnics as a group and some other kind of thing. So this was a motto for our lab for a while. So where we are is Okay, so suppose just for grins you say, okay, I agree, I'm ready to work hard. So then the benefit to me is, nice guy, I've finished with my doctor's degree and I'm ready to go out and the world is going to be happy with me for 45 years, right? Well, the answer to that is no. Absolutely no way. You are going to have to change. The problem is the world is changing and your knowledges have to change. There's new components, new procedures. There's probably even a couple of new countries that are going to be in existence before you've finished. There's going to be some language that you're going to need to know, whether it's programming language or a social language. So this is my idea. With the same gift of changing, you have the possibility for innovation and new stuff, and you have the job of taking care of yourself, looking for the future, because, man, you're going to be obsolete if you don't change. You have to be ready to follow what's the right thing. And you need to make good choices. So how are you going to be flexible enough? You need to know some basic stuff. So I would say this science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is a good basis. That sort of is what our society is built on. You wouldn't have iPhones or cars or something if you weren't able to make the mathematics that's behind this. And so then you would be qualified to do stuff. And you can engineer things which are practical and needed, or you can imagine things which are complete dreams you maybe can't pull off, but wow, would it be cool if you could do it. We just lost the principal guy in that field, Steve Jobs. So the next iPad, that was a pretty good thing. But in a way, what I'm talking about is the career where you go through the university, you get to be a young professor, senior professor, and so on. Finished. Nobody's going to be on that highway. We're all going to be doing some different thing, and a promise you won't be prepared for it. A promise that you're going to have to learn some new stuff. So I'd like to then talk about a couple of books which at least I have found interesting. Here is just an example of a harmless kind of thing. Cost $5 at the going out of business shop that this bookstore in the United States had. 50 mathematics ideas or 50 physics ideas, and if you look at on a different occasion, they'll have 50 ideas from biology or something. And that's not a crazy number of ideas for you to have. And the integration of the ideas is another topic. This idea about flatness is something which you really want to have a spin in. These kind of things. Also, Malcolm Gladwell has made some interesting points about you can load up stuff and it almost doesn't make any difference, and then finally you get to some place where there's really a catastrophic change, a tipping point. And another one which I enjoyed is Outliers. It's trying to have a realistic understanding of why it is that all the gymnasts should have certain heredity, or all the strong swimmers should have some kind of properties. And the obvious connections are not the ones. It's some much more subtle thing. It's just fascinating.